Star Wars fans might have suffered a blow earlier this year when EA pulled dice off of Battlefront 2, but it's not all doom and gloom. We've known for a while now that Respawn are making a sequel to last year's stellar Jedi Fallen Order, and with EA now referring to the IP as a franchise in a recent earnings call, it looks as though it's here to stay. The sequel is widely expected to release sometime around 2022, and will no doubt pick up where the last entry left off, with Cal Kestis, Seer Junda, Grease Dritus, and Night Sister Merrin off ready to explore the galaxy together. Not much is really known about the story at this stage, but given the setting of the first game, and the fact that Cal and co need to get out of the picture by the time the first Death Star gets built, fans can probably expect it to stick around the same time gap as it did before. 5 or so years after the fall of the Republic. For the first game, Respawn largely called upon characters of their own making to tell their story, but there were exceptions. Saw Gerrera appeared to lead an uprising on Kashyyyk, and Darth Vader himself even featured towards the end. But what other characters could the crew of the Stinger Mantis interact with in the sequel? Who else was around at the same time they were? Let's find out, shall we? I'm Ewan from WhatCulture Gaming, and here are 10 characters who could appear in Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order 2. Number 10. The Grand Inquisitor. The Grand Inquisitor may have only lasted one season of Star Wars Rebels, but he left a big impression all the same. A former Jedi Temple guard who turned to the dark side following Order 66, the Grand Inquisitor led the Inquisitorius and reported directly to Darth Vader. He was personally involved in the effort to apprehend Kanan Jarrus and Ezra Bridger during Star Wars Rebels, hunting them across the galaxy until Kanan slayed him in a duel on the Sovereign, an Imperial Star Destroyer, owned by Grand Moff Tarkin. To be honest, it was kind of a surprise he didn't feature in the first Fallen Order, especially when Cal and Seer led their attack on the fortress in the game's climax. He's literally the most important Inquisitor out there, and with both Cal and Seer having made themselves personally known to Vader now, it's possible the Grand Inquisitor could be tasked with personally seeing their execution. Number 9. Tarkin. Everyone's favourite Grand Moff, it's actually possible that Tarkin could appear in Fallen Order 2, albeit likely in a minor capacity. Once an officer in the Grand Army of the Republic, Tarkin became a key ally of Chancellor Palpatine and embraced the Empire wholeheartedly, working with Vader on numerous occasions before eventually overseeing the construction of the first Death Star under the direction of Orson Krennic. The interesting thing here is that Tarkin's rise to Grand Moff status occurs around the same time as the events of Fallen Order, with James Luceno's Tarkin novel also taking place in 14 BBY. Of course, Tarkin himself was much more concerned with rebel activity than any single Jedi, but if the Stinger Mantis crew find themselves operating as a rebel cell in Fallen Order 2, it's possible they could provoke a response from the Moff. Either that, or Vader wards him off with a patented Jedi business go back to your drinks. That could also happen too. Number 8. Boba Fett. Recently revealed to have survived his encounter with the Sarlacc pit with an upcoming appearance on The Mandalorian, everything's coming up Boba in 2020. Arguably Star Wars' most famous bounty hunter, Boba had already established himself as one of the galaxy's fiercest killers even before the end of the Clone Wars. At some point in between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, Fett donned his father's Mandalorian armor and began taking only the most challenging of contracts, eventually coming into the employ of Darth Vader following the destruction of the first Death Star. However, while Boba has featured heavily throughout the new Star Wars canon, Lucasfilm haven't really explored his early years as a solo bounty hunter all that much at all. That particular story was originally going to be told in the cancelled Star Wars 1313 game, and with the character spin-off film now in development hell too, the door may finally be open for a book, comic, or new video game to take a more detailed look at how Fett became so feared. That game definitely won't be Fallen Order, but there's no reason why Boba couldn't appear. A bounty was placed on Grease's head after all, and it would be pretty amazing if he came to collect. Number 7. Thrawn. It's a testament to just how great a character Thrawn is that he survived the dissolution of the old Star Wars canon. He was originally introduced all the way back in 1991's Heir to the Empire by writer Timothy Zahn, the first in a trilogy of novels. The books proved so popular that Zahn was brought back to write a new trilogy in 2017, which detailed the character's rise to power within the ranks of the Empire. Thrawn is such a fascinating figure, and was heavily involved in the events of Star Wars Rebels until its conclusion, with his fate left uncertain. He's a massive fan favourite, and having appeared in Star Wars games once before, it's high time he entered the medium once again. It would probably be very tricky to figure out a role for Thrawn in a Fallen Order sequel, given the events of Zard's new novels depict his rise to the Empire around the same time, but even a reference or two wouldn't go amiss. Number 6. Bo-Katan. Another character said to appear in Season 2 of The Mandalorian, Bo-Katan would make for a killer inclusion in Fallen Order 2, especially with Mandalore featuring so heavily in Star Wars as of late. The sister of Duchess Satine Kryze, Bo-Katan was a member of Death Watch, a Mandalorian paramilitary organization that rejected the government's policy of pacifism, as it contradicted the planet's warrior traditions. When Maul defeats Death Watch leader Pre Vizsla and takes control of the group and Mandalore, Bo leads the fight against the former Sith, eventually recruiting Ahsoka Tano and the 501st to liberate the planet from his rule. Following Maul's removal from power, Bo became the leader of Mandalore, but it didn't last for long. She was ousted by forces loyal to the Empire after refusing to follow the Emperor, which would eventually spark a new Mandalorian civil war. Katan is eventually able to reunite Mandalore after taking possession of the Darksaber, but that's still years after Fallen Order's current setting. Instead, any appearance from Bo in a sequel would have to see her in exile from Mandalore, fighting alongside the Night Owls. Besides though, who wouldn't want to visit Mandalore in Fallen Order 2? It's an amazing setting. Number 5. Ahsoka Tano. Ahsoka was up to a lot in between episodes 3 and 4, but it would be amazing if Respawn could find a way for her to cameo in some way in Fallen Order 2. The former apprentice of Anakin Skywalker, Ahsoka was once a skilled Jedi Knight who eventually left the Order towards the end of the Clone Wars. However, she was still designated an enemy of the Empire and was forced to go into hiding, faking her death along with clone Captain Rex following the aforementioned Siege of Mandalore. Ahsoka eventually becomes a key figure in organizing what would later be known as the Rebel Alliance, eventually going missing following a duel with Darth Vader a year before the Battle of Yavin. Much of Ahsoka's time spent before her return in Rebels is addressed in the Ahsoka novel by E.K. Johnston, and it covers a whole lot. We see how Ahsoka got her white lightsabers and how she got involved with the Rebels. This all takes place around 18 BBY, so there's still plenty of years to go until the events of that show. Time which could be used for her to link up with Cal and the Stinger Mantis for one brief adventure. Number 4. Maul. Maul might just be one of the greatest Star Wars characters ever created. Yes, it's understandable that his appearance in Solo: A Star Wars Story will have flummoxed some viewers, but those who've been keeping up with his return in the Clone Wars and later Rebels have been treated as some of the best Star Wars we've ever gotten. Tapping into Maul's lust for revenge against Obi-Wan Kenobi and the Master who spurned him, as well as his unquenchable thirst for power and dominance, Dave Filoni and friends turned Maul from just a cool-looking villain into one of the most complex and well-developed figures in Star Wars history, aided by a tremendous performance from Sam Witwer. The interesting thing here is that when Cal arrived on Dathomir in Fallen Order, he would have been there around the same time Maul was running Crimson Dawn. The former Dathomirian Sith loses his criminal empire after getting stranded on Malachor by the events of Star Wars Rebels, but in Fallen Order, he should be busy re-establishing his links to the underworld. It's doubtful Night Sister Merrin will ever want to return to Dathomir, but as long as she stays aboard the Stinger Mantis, there will always be the possibility of a route back to Maul. Number 3. Han Solo. Of course, one other thing to bear in mind with Fallen Order's timeframe is that it takes place about a couple of years before the main events of Solo: A Star Wars Story. The film starts around 13 BBY before finishing in 10 BBY, 4 years after Cal and Cere's assault on Fortress Inquisitorius, so there's clear potential for overlap. With the 2 planned sequels to Solo pretty much dead in the water, a shame actually, I really liked that film, one would hope that Lucasfilm Story Group can resurrect elements of any planned storylines for different media, even if it's just a snippet of one for Fallen Order. There's still a whole decade worth of adventures Han and Chewie get up to before they join the Rebel Alliance, and seeing Han at that midway point between the lovable scoundrel of Solo and the selfish gunfighter of A New Hope would be really interesting to see. Granted, Han is skeptical of the Force in A New Hope, which kind of means it might be impossible for him to meet Cal, but still, it's interesting to consider the overlap between Fallen Order and his burgeoning years as a smuggler. Maybe he gets referenced in passing. I don't know, I just kinda want Han in this game. Number 2. The Jedi of the High Republic. This is a bit of an out there theory, but let me explain. We still don't know what kind of sequel Fallen Order is getting. Respawn could just as easily choose to end Cal's journey where they did in the first game and opt to pursue a completely different character under the Jedi branding, however unlikely that may seem. That said, I could see Fallen Order 2 adopting a non-linear narrative. The first game's story revolved heavily around the Zepho and ancient Force cultures, who existed thousands of years before the Skywalker saga. Cal is even treated to a Force vision where one of the Zepho reveals the last survivors are heading into the unknown regions, to a fate that is still unclear. Could Fallen Order 2 revolve around Cal and Seer picking up where Eno Cordova left off, exploring the Zepho and other ancient Force cultures? It seems like a possible avenue, especially now with the introduction of the High Republic, a new publishing initiative from Lucasfilm that takes place a couple hundred years before the events of The Phantom Menace. The High Republic is by no means ancient, but it is old, and it's set to take a greater role in Star Wars in the coming years. It wouldn't be all that surprising at all if it had some sort of a role in Fallen Order 2, either in flashback or in the game's geography, sort of how the Zepho temples were used in the first game. And number 1, Starkiller. Okay, so this is the absolute wildest shot I'm going to take here, but bear with, it could totally happen. Those who played The Force Unleashed will have likely uttered a collective "wah" getting to this last entry, but there is a logic to it. Starkiller is a beloved character from the days of LucasArts, and while his story is no longer canon, there have been efforts to bring him into the new continuity. Dave Filoni actually considered making him an Inquisitor on Star Wars Rebels, but the idea eventually fizzled out, and the character's return has been put on ice ever since. This is where Fallen Order can come in. Even though Sam Witwer has dovetailed from one Star Wars role in Galen Marek to another in Maul, there's no reason to say he couldn't perform both roles. He'd be great to include as an Inquisitor, and if you still aren't sold on the idea, then take a look at this concept art by Daniel de Almeida. He combines the character's Sith Assassin costume with the standard uniform of the Inquisitors to impart something altogether unique and interesting, and articulates why Starkiller should be recanonized better than I ever could with this dodgy old voice. Although, one other note, he shouldn't be anywhere near as powerful as he was in the original Force Unleashed. Tone down the Force abilities but retain parts of the backstory, and you have a great character and an amazing callback all in one. And yeah, that was our list. Which Star Wars characters do you want to see in Fallen Order 2? Let me know in the comments below, and please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. You can find more articles like this at WhatCulture.com/gaming, and more of me on Twitter at YouRuinsThings. That's all for now though, have a great day, and may the Force be with you wherever you are. Bye!